Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me for this video. Joe here with Tufel Gun and Armory, and this video is one that I'm very excited to make for you all. This is going to be an initial assembly of a Palmetto State Dagger Compact. I have a stripped frame right here. I have a stripped slide right here. We're going to put them together, and like Bill and Ted, we're going to save the world with the beautiful sound of freedom. Just some administrative notes before we begin. I've gone ahead and I've set aside the iron sights. Those will be put on in a later video. This video is just going to be about assembling the slide, assembling the frame, putting them together, and having a fully functioning unit. Some of the sub-assemblies I've already put together just because they are rather difficult to take apart, not so much to put them together. So I can run you through with a step-by-step installation process, assembly process, and you'll be able to actually do it without watching me actually do it. Others I'm going to be actually putting together on camera for you. They're kind of plug and play. So with that being said, here they are. So the first one is going to be the trigger mechanism assembly. So you have your trigger mechanism assembly and then your ejector. And your ejector is going to slide all the way through it. The ejector looks like this. And it's sitting in a groove just like so. And you're going to gently tap it in until it's flush back here, right here. Once it's flush, your ejector's in the right spot. With the trigger bar and trigger, you have your shoe, your trigger, and your trigger bar, and they're held together by two roll pins. These, there you can see them better there. These two roll pins. So you have the two parts of the trigger that are held together by the bottom one, and then you have the trigger bar that comes in and is held in by the top one. These eventually will attach using the trigger spring to the trigger mechanism housing and become one assembly. That's part of what I'm going to do on camera for you. The next one is going to be the recoil spring subassembly. So with this, you have three parts. You have the guide rod that runs through it. You have the spring itself, and then you have a guide rod screw cap that is, let me see if you can see this. So you have flat edges on two sides for an open-faced wrench. And you're basically going to compress the spring around the guide rod. And then you're going to see, you can see how difficult it is to get that space. But you're basically going to screw tight that screw cap, and that holds your recoil spring with that tightness. All right, now you have your striker subassembly. Remember, with spring-loaded parts, you're going to want to have some sort of eye protection on because they can fly away under pressure. And if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll see if I didn't have these, I would have lost an eye. So you have your striker and you have your striker sleeve. Okay, the striker sleeve is going to be this piece that has that groove cut into it. And your striker is going to go through it, and that catch is going to go down that groove. And then with the spring, you're going to have two little spring cups, and these spring cups are what hold the spring tight. And they look like little semicircles, but when you put them together, they look like a little cup. And that fat end is what's going to catch the shoulder of your striker right here and hold the tension on that spring. So when you put your spring on, like so, you're going to slide the spring cups into the spring underneath that shoulder, and it's going to catch. Oops. So this part can be kind of hard because of the small parts. And if you have meaty sausage fingers like me, it could be a little bit tough, but perfect. Just like so. So now you have your striker sleeve, you have the striker in that groove, you have your striker spring, and then you have those spring cups up against that shoulder holding it in place. Next, you're going to have your extractor depressor plunger assembly, and that's going to consist of the plunger right here, the spring, the plunger spring, and the plunger bearing, which essentially looks like a screw without any threads, just like that, okay? And this spring is going to slide on the nipple of the plunger. You may have to twist it just a little bit, depending on how tight it is, but just like so. And then you're going to put the plunger in the other side, the bearing in the other side, just like so, and it'll look like that. And then after that, you have your striker safety and safety spring. Now, I did already put this together, but the best way to do it is take a set of needle nose pliers or my handy dandy slip ring pliers, and you're going to hold the spring and you're going to twist the safety on, because there's a little groove inside the safety that the spring will snap into, and it doesn't hold it very tight. I've had it come out a few times, but I finally got it in there tight, and it'll look just like so. Just like that. So the last assembly that you're going to have to put together is connecting your trigger mechanism housing to your trigger bar. Now when it's together, it'll look something like this inside of the firearm. But the way to hold them together is the trigger spring. And your trigger spring is going to be the one with the alternating hooks on either side. You know, one opens that way, the other opens down like this. Okay? And on the trigger bar and the trigger mechanism housing, you see these holes right here and right here. And that's where that trigger bar is going to, that trigger spring is going to connect. So having the trigger mechanism housing, you're going to go down from the outside and put that spring end through the hole, and it'll loop around like so. Now, with that being said, whenever you go to install the trigger bar, you'll have to kind of pinch it up, because it will just fall down into the trigger mechanism housing. But then you're going to do the same thing, and it may take some finagling, but you're going to do the same thing with the trigger bar. Just like so. Okay? And now you have them connected, just like that. And then, if you're looking at that cruciform right there, the right side of that cruciform is going to go down into that cruciform is going to go down into this groove right here in that trigger mechanism housing. And you're going to kind of rotate it right and down in, just like so. So now you have that mechanism in place. And just to show you the finished product, so that right arm on that cruciform is now in that groove in the side. Okay, now we're ready to put together the frame. And the frame is going to house quite a bit of your internals. You're going to have your magazine catch and that pin down in there. You're going to have your rear rail insert right here. You're going to have the fire control unit, the locking block, and the slide lock and slide lock spring. And then those are going to be held in by the locking block roll pin and the trigger mechanism housing roll pin, which are going to go here and here. So we're going to get started on that. So first we got the magazine catch, and you're going to want to put this spring in first. You will need some needle nose pliers for this, but you are going to place this spring. It's actually, I don't know why they call it a spring, other than the fact that there's spring-like tension on it, but it's really just a metal rod, just like so. And down in your firearm, you see that groove right down in there. It's going to go right in there, and you're going to push it down to where it is 1/3 of the way through the opening. Where's mine? There we go. So just like that. If you can see, it is about 1/3 of the way through that opening. And then you're going to slide the magazine catch in, and the magazine catch will go, let me see if I can get a better angle here. So your magazine catch will go in from right side as you're looking down the barrel, or as you're holding it. It'll go in from the right, and you're going to have to move it around that that spring. So you're going to pull that spring out a little bit using a tool of your choosing. I use a little flathead, but you're going to pull that spring out, and it's going to go around it. So I'll do that real quick and then show you what I'm talking about before I place the spring in place. Okay. So as you can see here, that spring is on the outside of the magazine catch now, and I can freely move this magazine catch in just like so. And now you have a little groove. Let me see if I can get better lighting on it. You have a little groove. I'm going to come up from the bottom right here. That is terrible. Right here on the magazine catch, you have a little groove. And right there, where my fingernail is. And that spring, you're going to have to push over and into that groove, because it's basically going to go inside the magazine catch. It's going to drop down and push over and hold that tension on that magazine catch. So going to push it to the right here. Just like so. So now, if you're looking, you can see that the magazine catch spring is in that magazine catch, and we now have tension in our magazine catch so it is operational. Okay. Next, you're going to have that rear rail insert, and that's just going to slide in here into the back just like so. Just like that. It's going to go with the curvature of the rear of the firearm, and it's just going to slide down in just like so. And then you have your slide lock and your slide lock spring. And your slide lock spring is going to go in first. It's going to go right here in this little up and down cavity in an L-shaped down motion. So right here. There we go. So if you're looking at it, looks like an L-shaped down. Okay, just like so. And you're going to just slide that into that spot, just like so. So it's down there in that up and down cavity right there. And your slide lock is going to go through here. Doesn't matter which side, but it's going to go through here. But it's stopped at this point by the spring. So you have to push the spring down. So it'll go across here, and it'll go above this spring. So we're going to go ahead and push that spring down. See if I can get a good angle on it. And we're going to slide this in, and then I'll show you about halfway through what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay. So now I have it about halfway installed, but as you can see, it is going up and over that slide lock spring. And you're just going to push it the rest of the way in. Just like so. And now it is all the way in on both sides. And that slide lock spring is what provides that tension on it for when you go to release the slide and disassemble it. Okay. All right. One thing I forgot to mention when putting together the two pieces of the fire control unit, attaching the trigger bar to the trigger mechanism housing, is you have to install the connector, which is this other L-shaped piece right here, to the side of the trigger mechanism housing. And so I've disconnected the two, just like so, and you see a little groove right here with a slot, and your connector is literally going to go right there. L-shaped down, and it's going to slide in just like so. And there should be a tiny little bit of a bend right here. Okay. And now we can put the trigger bar back in just like so. And now your trigger bar is done. And with that being said, since we now have our rear rail assembly and our slide lock in place, now we can drop in this fire control unit. Now, just a note before I drop in this fire control unit, okay, one of the hardest parts on this firearm is going to be actually, firearm styled like this in general, is going to be that trigger pin. And that is because you have so many different things that you're pushing that trigger pin through. You're going to have your locking block and the trigger, and you're also going to have the slide stop and slide stop spring, as well as the frame of the firearm itself, all going through, all go in different directions. So there's going to be tension, a little bit of tension on that trigger pin, because you're having to push it through all these different mechanisms to hold it all in place together. So I hope that makes sense. It'll make sense once I actually get down to doing it. But now that we have this part done, we can drop in the fire control unit. Trigger first, just like so, and then rotate the trigger mechanism housing down in like so. Okay. And just like that, now we are going to put in the sorry, see which roll pin it is. Okay. Now we're going to put in the trigger mechanism housing roll pin. And get that locked into place. Okay. All right. Now that we have that in place and it's flush on both sides, we are going to drop in the locking block. The locking block is going to be forward angled, same with the firearm, and it's going to drop in right there. And then we're going to hold that in place with the locking block roll pin. The locking block roll pin is going to go in this front hole right here. Okay. All right, so now that roll pin is in place, now we can put the slide lock in place, and that is going to go in between that locking block and the trigger, just like so. And I'm going to be able to show you this. So it's going to go right there between the locking block on the outside and the trigger on the inside. There's a gap, and it's going to slide right in there. It's okay if you have a little bit of tension, but that's that. And then what I like to do is, because there's so many pieces, let me fix this. Because there's so many pieces, so many components, that the trigger bar has to go, the trigger pin has to go all the way through. I like to take a smaller punch and kind of put it through the firearm and make sure that everything is lined up the way it's supposed to be. That way it'll be easier to get that trigger pin in, because it can be somewhat of a pain in the rear. So if you have tension on it, it's all good. Just, make sure that you something is probably not lined up properly, and then all you're going to be doing is really making sure that things are lined up the way they should be. But due to the nature of all of these different components pulling on it in opposite directions, you have the trigger pulling down, you have the slide lock pulling to the rear, you have the locking block pulling up. You're going to have some tension on this pin, and that's all right. Just gently tap on it, just like so, and it'll get it through that area, and gently tap it into place. All right. And it'll click. So Now that that trigger bar is in, trigger bar, I keep saying trigger bar. Now that that trigger pin is in, pardon my lack of terminology here, the frame is complete. So we have a fully assembled frame. You have your locking block, your slide lock, your ejector, everything, your trigger, all of the main parts of the frame, everything is installed. And just checking the magazine catch. Magazine catch holds it secure. And we are good with the frame. Now we're going to start on the slide. Now, with the slide, one of the things that I like to do first is take that rear plate, and you're going to have this little metal piece. This metal piece slides right in. You're going to have a channel just like that. You can see right through it. It's going to slide right in and be flush on both sides. You may or may not have to gently tap it. I can get this one almost all the way in, but it is going to be just like so. So it's even on both sides of it. And this is going to be the outer portion. So this is going to be facing out when it's installed on the firearm. Because this side, see how it's got that little design on it? That is what is going to coincide with the groove on your striker sleeve. So, all right. So compared to the frame, the slide is far easier to do because most of the assemblies you've already put together and then it's just plug and play. So the first thing you're going to do is in the back of your slide, you see this giant hole. That channel is where your striker is going to go into. So you're going to put that in, and it's okay that it's not all the way in. It eventually gets held in by your slide plate. However, you have to move it back just a little bit to be able to fit the safety in properly, which is going to be the next part. So on the bottom of the slide, you see that big hole next to my pointer finger. The safety is going to slide right down into that hole, spring side down. And the safety actually holds in your extractor, which is going to be your next step. And I'm going to pull my phone up to the light a little bit to be able to show you this better. But you have a indentation down in there, a recess, and then you have your safety. And when I push down on the safety with my thumb, it moves it out of the way. And that tension, when I release it, that tension is what's going to hold the extractor into place. So with that being said, you have your extractor right here. And here is the extractor claw that is going to catch on to the groove of the casing of that round. And then this part right here, this circular part, is going to go down in that recess that I just showed you. So pushing that safety in, you're going to slide it right down in right there. And then you're going to release that safety and it is held in place. Okay. So that is the extractor, the safety, and the striker sleeve. And the next part is you're going to put in this plunger. And this plunger is going to go in just like so on the, if you're looking at the back of the firearm, it's going to be the upper right into this tiny hole right here. And now that everything is installed, just like that, now we can put on the rear slide plate. And this is where you will need some sort of pin, punch, tool, whatever, because you're going to have to push those components in to get the slide plate past it, or at least started on it. So I'm just taking my trusty small screwdriver, my G2 from Grace, and pushing that one in, and then sliding it up, and then pushing that plunger in as well, and gonna push it past it. And you're gonna want to, once you get it past those components, you want to push up on it until you hear that audible click, and then that slide plate is on and everything is set and good to go. Once you're at this point, now you're ready to place that barrel, and that barrel is going to go in just like so. It's going to have to go forward just a little bit to get past some of the components in the slide, and then when you move it back, it drops down in from gravity into your window right here. And then your recoil spring assembly is going to go right in underneath it, just like this, and you're going to depress it just a little bit and slide it down into this groove. I will show you this groove real quick. But there's going to be on the bottom of the barrel, you're going to see this little, you're going to see straight, straight, and then semicircle. And that semicircle is where your recoil spring guide rod is going to rest. So you're going to place it in here like so, and put pressure on it just a little bit to compress that spring, and it's going to sit just like that. Now your slide is fully assembled, and we can put the two parts together. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to slide all this into place just like so. And we have it on now. And that is the completed firearm. So with that being said, obviously no ammo, but now we have the completed portion of this. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the slide to the rear. I'm going to drop the mag so we can see that it is physically inspected. There is no live ammunition still anywhere in the workspace. And I'm going to set this aside. Thanks again for joining me for this video. I hope each and every one of you found some use in the assembly of this Palmetto State Dagger Compact. If you have any questions, comments, or you have a suggestion on what I should do next, be sure to leave it in the comment box below. Also hit that subscribe bell. It's the best way that we grow together. Until next time, I'm Joe with Tufel Gun and Armory, and I'll see you later.